There are a number of factors in deciding whether, when, and why a cedent or a reinsured would want reinsurance. Obviously, in the process, the cedent needs to assess its needs. It needs to decide how it's going to go about procuring the reinsurance, what channel it's going to use. It's going to have to think about the structure it wants to use. Is it going to be a quota share basis or some other form? It's going to have to look at several markets, put together a presentation and a submission, and it's going to have to negotiate with the reinsurer with respect to the type of coverage it wants, the terms and conditions, the exclusions, the limitations, the definitions, etc. It's going to perhaps have a number of reinsurers and have to deal with allocation issues. And then, of course, ultimately, once all these decisions are made with respect to structure and terms, there's going to be a negotiation process and ultimately the execution of an agreement. Why does a cedent look for reinsurance? The most obvious answer to that is additional capacity and protection of capital. Reinsurance protects the cedent who, if everything is done properly and correctly, will get a credit on its books with respect to reserving for whatever reinsurance risk it cedes so it can write more business. It certainly reduces the uncertainty for the cedent because it has protection. It accesses other markets. Some of the reinsurers have expertise in certain kinds of large risks, industrial risks, that can assist with respect to the process of deciding what risks to take. Another thing reinsurance is used for, which many of you probably are familiar with, is what are called fronting transactions. Sometimes a reinsurer who cannot do business directly in the U.S. will go through a cedent which will front a particular risk that essentially will be picked up 95, 90, 100% by the reinsurer. Again, it's to reduce exposure, expand capacity, and allow the cedent to do more business. Distribution channels. Are you going to go through a broker, or are you going to try to access the markets directly? There are advantages and disadvantages to both. Generally, a broker has access to a lot more of the market and can solicit competing bids, which can provide a more favorable negotiation environment. Obviously, brokers provide other services. They may provide claims services. They may assist with the negotiation of the contract. Doing it directly, the cedent has to go to each market directly, but that might allow a larger capacity. There are two general types of reinsurance. Again, as a general matter, there's what's called treaty reinsurance and facultative reinsurance. Treaty covers a portfolio of risks. Essentially, the reinsurer underwrites the operations of the reinsured with a particular line of business, say automobile liability. The reinsurer will basically agree to reinsure whatever automobile policies the cedent writes over a period of time within perhaps guidelines. Typically, the placement is provided by the cedent, and there are generally very open terms and conditions. It's a broad type of arrangement where a whole portfolio of business is being protected by a reinsurer. Facultative reinsurance would be on a risk-by-risk basis, and essentially the reinsurer will look at each risk and be either directly or at least to some degree involved in the underwriting process. And typically the underwriters work together. And the facultative reinsurance normally will follow the terms of the cedent's policy more closely than in a treaty, which is kind of a broad delegation of authority to write a line of business.